This episode is brought to you by Crunch. Whatever sport gets you going, go there with Crunch. Unlock your chance to win a trip to the championship of your choice, plus thousands of dollars in instant win prizes. To enter, visit MVPmemories.com. No purchase necessary to enter to win. Open only to legal residents of the 50 United States and the District of Columbia, who are 18 years of age or older at the time of promotion registration. Sweepstakes begins on 3/13/23 and ends on 6/30/23.
As if the McCrispy couldn't get any better, Bacon and Ranch just entered the chat. The Bacon Ranch McCrispy, available at participating McDonald's for a limited time. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
We are officially in the month of April, and we have our first April edition of the Strictly Stripes podcast. Welcome in, everyone. Muhammad Ahmad here with you to kick off another week alongside Andrew Gillis and Mike Nizick. And we are fully, just about completely strictly draft mode from here on out for the rest of the month. And I think a good way to open up the week, and more importantly, open up the month, is to really start honing in on positional players we like, why we like them, where the Bengals can get some value out of certain players, and where they might fit in the draft. And we'll be doing this positionally, especially based on the most pressing positional needs for the Bengals. And to start, I wanted to look at tight end. So what we're going to be doing is me, Andrew, and Mike in a random order. One of them will go first, I would think. We're going to basically say a tight end that we think is a really good fit for the Bengals, what round that player will be picked and why that's the case, and we'll kind of compare and contrast our options. We'll have some honorable mentions of guys that aren't at the top of the list, and we'll kind of round that up as we move forward here for the rest of the week. But who wants to go first, guys? I know both of you have someone or someones that you really are high on right now. Who would you want to pick if you're the Bengals, and in what round and why?
I'll go first. So I have two guys kind of in mind, but one of them, Michael Mayer at tight end. I think you would need to take him at 28. I can't imagine. I mean, maybe you're in a situation where Darnell Washington goes and Kincaid goes, or maybe they're still on the board and you move back and take Mayer, but with their first pick, they're going to have to take Mayer, whether it's at 28 or whether you move back to like 32 or something like that. I like Mayer just in the way that I think he's kind of what this offense needs. He's an inline tight end. He's a good blocker. He played really well against Clemson when Notre Dame played Clemson in November. Had a really nice game against some NFL-ready defensive linemen. I mean, you kind of look at who was on that defensive line for Clemson and kind of the factory that they are up front. So you're going to get some blocking ability, which you need. They didn't really have that, I don't think, in spades out of their tight end position last year. Michael Mayer, he's not the most athletically gifted in this class. You kind of look at some of his speed scores, some of his times that he posted at the combine. They might kind of, put a ceiling on where you think he's going to be. But, I just kind of look at his stats. He was nothing but productive at Notre Dame, especially in the last 2 years. If you know anything about Notre Dame, his quarterback play in 2022 was pretty atrocious, and they had pretty much no receivers. He was kind of the only receiving threat on that team consistently. And, he still posted 67 catches for 809 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's a guy who gets open underneath. He's a really good red zone target. And I think when you kind of look at what this offense needs, you need somebody who can put their hand in the dirt and also get down the field, kind of be a safety net for Joe Burrow. And I think that with T. Higgins, with Jamar Chase, you kind of don't really need anybody to stretch the field right now. You need an underneath blanket. And I think that's what Mayer gives you. You know what he's going to give you. And to me, I just think if you can get some kind of positional stability going into 2023, kind of knowing what you're going to get from Mayer, that's a pretty big positive. So I really like Mayer in this class.
All right, Mike, you're up to the plate. Who you got and win?
Yeah, I mean, I get what Andrew's saying. I don't think I have a hard time believing Mayer's going to be there. I see him going to the top 25 with Kincaid, those two kind of being gone by the time the Bengals pick. I don't think it would be a bad pick if they take him, if he's available at 28. But I also don't necessarily think with this type of deep tight end class that you really have to do that in the first round, or that's the way to get the best value for the pick. I would try to be a little more flexible and take kind of the best player available at that spot, especially somebody that can have an impact right off the bat. And I just think that's the way they should go in the first round. I had my mock draft, my latest mock draft posted earlier today. In the third round, I had Michigan's Luke Schoonmaker going to the Bengals. I think that would be a really good pick for them. I think the only reason that he is sort of outside that top tier is his lack of sort of production. But he wasn't a full-time starter until a month into his regular senior year or redshirt junior year in 2021. He was a fifth-year senior last fall. I like that he's a little bit older. I think that'll help him sort of fit into the NFL game and kind of learn what the coaches are doing from all sort of, anything you read about him says he's a really good inline player that can block right away and really take on linebackers and do things that the Bengals like. But he also, I think, could be really developed into a top-end pass-catching threat. He had 35 passes for 418 yards last year. And his RAS score, relative athletic score, which kind of measures him against his athletic numbers from the combine and pro day against other players, and historically is sort of ridiculous. He had a 9.86 out of 10. That ranks 16th out of 1,091 tight ends measured from 1987 to this year. He's got elite speed, elite agility, great explosion. I mean, I think he'll be moving up boards, but he would be a really good value pick in the third round, and I think sort of fit in everything that the Bengals are looking for.
Well, gosh, with the way you described him, I wonder if he'll even be taken like in the second round, because like if he does get up higher, then who knows, maybe someone else will take him, or I forget which pick the Bengals have in the third round, but that's going to be an interesting one. I like that though. I really like how you talked about his age, because I feel old saying this. I just realized he's born in the same year as me, 98. So yeah, he is pretty old, but that could be a really good thing, like you said. I mean, gosh, 6'6", 250, 260, like that's really good size. But I want to kind of touch on a point you made about Mayer not being available. And that is, I think, Mike makes a point. Like, there's a really good possibility that Mayer's gone, because like he's easily one of the best, if not the best, tight ends available. So I guess kind of what I want to ask you, Andrew, is let's say it's pick 28, Mayer's off the board, and maybe to make this a little bit harder, Kincaid is also off the board, like Mike said. Who do you take at that point? Like, if you're the Bengals, do you even take one in the first round, or at that point are you looking towards second, third, fourth round to grab somebody?
Yeah, I have a guy in the fourth round. If you're willing to hear another recruiting pitch,
I would love to hear it. Pitch it to me.
Yeah. So I know Mike was kind of talking about his guy kind of be. What did you say he was? 16th out of 1,091.
Yeah, that RAS score, yes.
Yeah, so there's a tight end this year, Zach Kuntz. He's a tight end from Old Dominion. I actually think Mike, I don't know, did he play in that Virginia Tech game? I don't know. He might have been injured.
Yeah, I think I covered him twice, to be honest.
Okay, because so he played at ODU, but in terms of that RAS score, he was first out of 1,091 tight ends.
Wow.
He's an elite player in terms of his speed. Ran a 4.55 40-yard dash, 1.57 40-yard 10-yard split, 40-inch vertical jump. Like he's a really, really athletic player. The risk with him is that he didn't play a lot in 2022. He only had 12 catches for 144 yards, and he only played in 4 games. So that's not exactly the production you want to see from a player who is coming from a lower level of college football. If you're not going to be drafting, a Darnell Washington, a Michael Mayer, a Dalton Kincaid, you kind of want to see a player have multiple years of production. But in 2021, he had 73 catches for 692 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's proven that he can do it. And I just think that if you miss on the first crop of tight ends, if you're not going to get someone who immediately is going to be an impact player for you in 2023, to me, this just kind of screams, hey, now it's time to kind of take a swing for the fence with a player who, you think might become something really, really special. And, that's kind of, I would kind of look to the fourth round for a guy like this. And that's kind of what the fourth round is made for, guys that are, maybe athletic, who are a little bit raw, or guys who are coming from smaller schools, or guys who have been injured. There's a couple different boxes that you check there with Kuntz. So I think if you draft him, he really can give you a special kind of upside in 2024 and beyond. I wouldn't count on much for 23, but man, if that turns out, that's going to be a really, really smart pick. So that's kind of where I would look.
I'm actually looking at, since you mentioned his numbers, he actually had the highest athleticism score from NFL Next Gen Stats. So not just the RAS, but Next Gen Stats had him as the highest athletically ranked tight end. He ran a 4.55 40, which is pretty, that's freakish. For someone who's 6'7", 255, that's great. And I think, who knows, maybe that's a guy that he's a day 3 pick. Maybe he's developed on, this is not just with the Bengals, anybody who takes him, maybe you put him on a practice squad, develop him for a little bit. Because obviously there are some of the concerns where he's not as fluid on tape. But yeah, Andrew, I'm kind of glad you mentioned that, because I was kind of torn on him. And part of why I didn't ultimately make him as my pick, which I'm about to say, was more so because of those concerns and the fluidity. But I also do think that I could be very wrong, and I hope I am, because it looks like he's got a lot of potential. I think for me, so I had to kind of think about this one. I will say this. If Mayer was on the board, I would take him. But if not, where I would go in this case is, and this is a guy I've been reading about a lot, and I'm pretty sold on him, Tucker Kraft out of SDSU. Not San Diego State, because obviously we're taping this before the national championship game for all you basketball fans out there. South Dakota State, just like Dallas Goedert, who played there as well. And funny enough, I actually think in some ways he shows me shades of a guy like Dallas Goedert, who obviously had the year he had playing in a Super Bowl with the Eagles. Kind of like Michael Mayer, he's not super fast. He ran about the same 40-yard time, a 4.69. So you're not talking about a guy who's going to threaten the seams, but maybe he looks faster than he really is on tape. I do think he's also very athletic. He's kind of in the top 7 in terms of the next-gen stats scores that I looked at. Really, if you look at some of his film, I saw the other day, one thing that sticks out is he really absorbs contact. So you talking about yards after catch, kind of like you got from Hayden Hurst, which, I think one of the biggest things you're losing with him is whether it's the hurdles or breaking tackles, it's not going to be elite, but it's going to be good enough for someone at his level. So I think if you kind of want to have some shades of Hayden Hurst, you can get that from a guy like him in that sense. He's kind of the way he's been described, I think, by guys like Daniel Jeremiah, is he's more of a combination tight end. So if you want a projectable skill set who can, have really good pass catching, really good run blocking, that's ideal. He seems like he'd be better in formations that involve 12 personnel. So in this case, 2 tight ends, which the Bengals didn't run a whole lot of last year because they had Hakeem Adeniji come off the bench for that. But I'm sure there's going to be some place where they have that. But even then, the body control, the catch toughness, I think it makes him more than a traditional tight end. So, if you go 3rd round and, you address other needs in the first 2 rounds, maybe you go edge rusher, maybe you go cornerback or offensive tackle, either side of the line, I think that's a great pick to have in the 3rd round if you can get a guy like that. What do you guys think? Obviously, Mike, you have a 3rd round tight end yourself. What do you think of a guy like Tucker Kraft? Where do you see him kind of fitting in that mold compared to some of the names that we mentioned?
Terrible pick. Just awful.
Terrible. Just blew my hopes there, man.
Kuntz as well. You're not picking developmental guys. I think you need guys that could contribute with all 3 of your picks. And waiting on a guy for 2 years, 3 years, I think is crazy at this point. You want a guy that can step in right away. You didn't sign a very good, tight end with a lot of. He's not bad, but he doesn't have a ton of upside, is what I'm saying. And so I think you're looking for a guy that could step in, possibly be that sort of dynamite, right away production, put you over that hump. And I think both of those picks, Mayer, I think fits the bill certainly. But those other two guys, I mean, what are you waiting for at this point? I mean, you need guys now, and you can't look for future talent and bargains and free agents other than one guy. I think that with their bargain hunting and free agency, they've got to be really aggressive at trying to find players that can help them on week one against whoever they play, and not look for guys that played weaker competition, guys that don't have that sort of background. I just think that that's not where this team is at. I mean, I think you're not trying to stash players right now. You're trying to find the guy that can get you that trophy, or at least get you a couple of wins on the way to that trophy, or help you do that. Not just sit on the bench and hold the guy's water.
Well, so I have a question.
Whoa, hold the water, man.
So then ideally, I just kind of with that in mind, like, are you saying that they shouldn't draft a tackle? Like ideally, like, what would your first 3 to 4 rounds be then? If you're saying you
clearly didn't read my mock draft, I addressed this morning.
I did not read your mock draft yet. I'm sorry.
Really hurtful. No, I think they should just keep Jonah Williams and roll. I don't think they should spend and not worry about. I think you can worry about. You could try to find a prospect at tackle later in the draft that you could develop. But I think you keep Jonah Williams and you address the other positional needs, because the way you set up the roster, you obviously have a hole at running back, obviously have a hole at tight end. So, I mean, there's two clear immediate positional needs that you need players that can contribute in week one. For my draft this morning, I picked a defensive end because I still think that that's the way to get a bump to help that defense while not spending a ton of money, because I think that defense, I took away a lot of pieces, but I think one way to smooth over some issues in the secondary is to rush the passer consistently, and that second team just didn't do that. So finding a guy, it's going to be tough because that 28 spot's kind of weird. There's not a lot of great edge rushers in that area, but that's kind of how I view it.
So you're saying, kind of like you talk about the bargain hunting aspect of free agency. So you're saying you don't think Irv Smith is like a guy that you go to on day one like you did with Hayden Hurst last year. You think that you got to get somebody.
Well, I think he'll be the starter, but I think you also need a rookie that could push him, but also possibly be better, that has a bigger upside. I think you know what you're going to get at this point from him. But a guy that with sort of all the athletic talent in the world, that's in top tier tight end group, that's sort of one of the best one in years. Any one of those top 7 guys seems like a guy that has a higher ceiling than him and can contribute in week one.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break, talk more about those picks and what that means for the Bengals' other first and second round selections, kind of like Mike touched on. But we'll have that when we come back right here on the Strictly Stripes podcast. Hey there, it's Muhammad Ahmad from the Strictly Stripes podcast. And if you still don't know what Cincinnati Football Insider is, listen up. It's a community of fans who want the inside scoop on the Bengals and a direct connection to the podcast and the reporters who cover the team. Here's how it works. Andrew, Mike, and I will text your phone a few times a day with breaking news, analysis, and our insights on the Bengals. And it's the inside scoop on what we're hearing. And we're giving you the inside word before it even hits social media. If you join Cincinnati Football Insider, you get to participate on the podcast, and you can text us directly. It's a great way to cut through the clutter of social media for just $4.99 a month. Still not sure? Just try it for 2 weeks, and if you don't like it, you can text the word STOP at any time, but you won't want to cancel once you join the community of hardcore Bengals fans. So here's how you get on board. Text 513-940-4193 or go to cleveland.com/Bengals and click on the blue banner at the top of the page. It's a great time to join as we're covering the NFL Draft, OTAs, mini camps, and much more to come later this year. So give us a try for 2 weeks and see what you think. Just text again the number 513-940-4193. All right, and thanks for staying with us on the Strictly Stripes podcast. Before we get back into our discussion, I want to remind you all, we have some news to share. If you missed last week, we have a newsletter. You can sign up now for our Strictly Stripes newsletter. You get the latest Bengals news, analysis, and opinion in your inbox every morning. The best part is it's free. You get to keep up with the team and all of our reporting. You can sign up right now at cleveland.com/newsletters. Takes just a minute. You could do a lot of things in a minute. Instead of scrolling through Twitter, Instagram, just sign up right now, cleveland.com/newsletters, and make sure you click on the Strictly Stripes Cincinnati football newsletter. All right, jumping back into our discussion about the best tight ends that fit for the Bengals and where they fit in the draft. So, Mike, I want to keep touching on a point. Like you have a really good point that I want to kind of look more into. So you're talking about you want guys who win now, whether you draft them first round, second round, whenever you need guys who are going to contribute to the play ASAP. So obviously I kind of had a third round tight end, Tucker Kraft out of not San Diego State. I'm sorry. The championship has me mixed up. South Dakota State. You have Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. I mean, what do you think separates Schoonmaker to where he is? Maybe not the Michael Mayer, not the Dalton Kincaid, but he's good enough that if you get him over other tight ends, that third, fourth round tier, that he can start, whereas other guys you're not so sold on. What separated him from like the rest of that pack at that point?
Well, I don't think much separates him from the top. Like, I think he could easily be in that top group. I mean, if you're talking about, a Darnell Washington, a Luke Musgrave, or Sam Laporta, I think those guys are all sort of, possibilities. In terms of being better than that other group, I think, the guys that are below them are guys you guys mentioned. Competition, obviously, Big Ten schedule, I think, is going to be much more imposing than South Dakota State or Old Dominion. Having played, I think, in 40-plus career games. I think that his pedigree, obviously played in the playoff. Those are things that, haven't had success, I think are things that the Bengals look at. So I think all those sort of, different check marks. He's not the only guy. I mean, like I said, that top tier group is really good. Like, I don't think you can go wrong with a Darnell Washington from Georgia. I'm just not sure. Some of those guys are in weird spots. Like, if you pick Washington, I think he might be a little bit of a reach at 28, but he probably won't be available in the second round. So it's going to be kind of a balance to try to find the how these guys go off the board. And so that's why I think a guy like Mayer in this class, Kincaid seems to be like a consensus top 15, and Mayer seems to be kind of trending upwards of 20 or higher. So it's going to be hard for him to sort of slide back.
No, it's all a good point. And I like what you said about like weird spots, because that's the thing. Like, you have some guys who like might not be there at 28, but like might not be there early second round. Like, you can call them, I guess, tweeners in terms of like where they're going to be drafted, like spot wise, like, in the first, second round, and maybe even beyond that, because like it's just such a deep class. Like, you even got guys going up to like the 6th, 7th round that are nowhere near what you're getting in the first round, but they're still better than like, tight ends you'd get in the 6th, 7th round a year ago or 2 years ago or however long ago. But I guess, you guys mentioned your picks, Schoonmaker, Andrew had Michael Mayer and Kuntz out of Old Dominion. I had Tucker Kraft. Are there any other honorable mentions you guys have, like, for other tight ends? And as far as like those honorable mentions, like, do you have those guys in specific rounds where maybe it's not even top 3 rounds? It could be round 4, round 5. I mean, heck, round 6. Like, any slept-on guys that you want to give honorable mention to?
No one in particular. I think you can kind of plant your flag on some guys and say, if he's here, we'll consider him. I think of a guy like Darnell Washington. Like, I wouldn't consider him in the first round. I would consider him in the second round with that pick if he kind of slides to the end of the second round. So, that would involve a scenario where, Kincaid, Mayer, Musgrave, and maybe like Kraft and Laporta are gone or something like that. Like, I think that, I agree with Mike's point about, you need to find players who are going to help you win now, because this team is built to win now. I just think when you get to the later rounds, it's okay to take a chance on a guy, if you think he's going to be, or you think you can turn him into something. So, Darnell Washington, he's kind of a little bit of both for me. He did play at Georgia. He did play behind Brock Bowers. So you're kind of in a unique situation where he wasn't a feature guy, but he doesn't have to be a feature guy in Cincinnati. So, that's a guy that I think you could kind of blend. Okay, we haven't seen as much as we would like to from this guy in terms of, a number 1 tight end role, but I think he's athletic enough and he's got some, he's got enough skills to where you can take a chance on a guy like that.
But it'd be hard right now for you mentioned drafting a tight end late. They have a lot of positional needs they have to address. I mean, they probably have to do a quarterback at some point late in the draft. They probably need a tackle late in the draft, regardless of if you want to draft, clear replacement for Jonah Williams. You need running back and tight end, like we've talked about. Probably some help in the secondary. And right now they have 2 compensatory picks, and that could obviously still change, right? If there's guys in there,
I believe so. I believe so. Yeah.
They weren't very active outside of signing Orlando Brown Jr. So there are spots like, unless they make some moves here in the next couple of weeks, where they clearly need bodies in the draft, and so drafting like multiple guys at one spot feels like a bit of a luxury, like a tight end. Like I don't know if that they're capable of doing that with some of the needs they have as of right now.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask, like, if you thought, how much of a luxury or like a realistic possibility is it to draft 2 tight ends? I think right now, yeah, it is asking for much, but like, who knows? I mean, like you mentioned quarterback, maybe you re-sign Brandon Allen, then maybe like if there's somebody just in the 7th round you want to bring, if you don't re-sign like Mitch Wilcox, like maybe that's your Mitch Wilcox right there, and then you have Devin Asiasi for more depth. I could see that. But who knows, maybe this is crazy. We can talk more about this later, but I mean, imagine you get to the 7th round and you think you have most of your needs addressed. You re-sign Brandon Allen. Maybe you draft a punter. Like, I don't know if Michael Turk is available or one of those top tier punters we mentioned, like around the combine. Like, you could do that because we know for a fact that they're going to bring somebody in. Like, they are going to bring competition for Drew Chrisman. How they do it, we don't know. I could maybe, like, this is if everything is met at that point and they just want to have fun of like, okay, let's take a punter. Kind of like they took Evan McPherson in the 4th round, almost 2 years ago, which is crazy. But yeah, I think it's a luxury now. It could change, but I mean, even then, I just think you have so many needs that like it's kind of like spoiled to kind of think about, oh, let's get a bunch of tight ends. Because I mean, like worst case, you get someone in the first 3-4 rounds and you just bring back Mitch Wilcox. You have your tight end room right there. Is it the sexiest? Probably not, at least unless you get like a 1st round guy. But when you got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I guess that eases some of the concern. But I just want to wrap up with the pressing question of the day. We always have to have a pressing question at the very end. We're taping this about 2 hours shy of the national championship game in Houston. Who are you guys picking, the Aztecs or the Huskies of UConn?
UConn looks like a machine. So I'm going to take
do.
UConn. I think my bank account would appreciate UConn winning. I'm in a bracket pool. So I'm in a bracket pool. I need UConn to win, and I need if I want to win first, I need there to be 149 points because I'm tied with somebody else, and that's the tiebreaker. So go UConn, go scoring a lot of points.
Since this will be a really informed pick, since I've not watched a single minute of the tournament.
What? A single minute? Like you haven't even looked at the screen for like 60 seconds.
That's wild. Why not?
I'm actually blown by that.
Like, do you just not like basketball? Not like what's the reasoning there?
Got life, man. Don't have to watch bad basketball. I mean, I'm good.
What, bad basketball? This has probably been the best tournament in like forever. All the upsets, the Cinderella madness, the fact that the Final Four was decided by a game-winning buzzer beater for San Diego State. I mean, how often do you see that? We haven't seen that since, I guess it would have been the kid from
I did not see it now, so I mean, it could have.
You still haven't even seen the buzzer beater?
No.
Like you don't go on. You haven't gone on Twitter and seen it?
No.
So Mike is not wrong when he says. Well, he's sort of wrong when he says bad basketball, but college basketball is so very, very, very much worse than the NBA. It's
of course
comically bad.
Sure.
And there are to every time you watch a college game, you will see a little score line at the bottom. Team has not made field goal in 4.5 minutes.
Oh,
Team has not scored point in 2.5 minutes. Like every team, like, and especially if you watch that San Diego State FAU game,
it was a game of runs.
College kids late in a basketball game, like they make a mess in their pants. Like they absolutely melt down. They have no idea what to do, and they just kind of panic. And the team that has the least guys that panic in a close game wins. So Mike's not necessarily off base, but I mean, it's still very, very exciting.
I mean, it's just like the parody is the best part, because like with the NBA, it's so predictable. Like the Warriors, the Cavs, and the Suns. Like, I mean, after a while, you get sick of seeing LeBron and Steph Curry in the finals.
The Suns haven't won an NBA title, right?
Well, they were in the NBA Finals. I'm saying they were in the NBA Finals 2 years ago, and they were the top seed in the West last year. So, like, you can always count on certain teams to be certain contenders, like the Bucks, the Celtics. Celtics were just in it. They could go back into this year. But with college basketball, if you told me that Florida Atlantic, which most people have never even heard of, San Diego State, Miami, and UConn were going to be in the Final Four, I probably would have laughed and said UConn is the only one that would have made sense. Like, FAU, I would have laughed if you thought FAU was making like the second round. I thought they were lucky to even get in the tournament for as good as they were. They almost lost their conference tournament, but like they were one buzzer beater away from a national championship game. Like, you don't get that in the NBA, man. It's just okay. I'm gonna stop raging. I need to calm down.
I don't watch the NBA either, though, so I don't understand. This is not a point that.
So you just don't like basketball in general.
Well, I just don't. I mean, it's not something. I mean, if you want to talk about succession, you want to talk about something really exciting, like that's where it's at. We could talk about that.
Wait, about what?
Know what that word?
I have not seen one second of Succession in my life.
What's that?
Yeah, and you
it's a
guys
TV show on HBO. I will watch it.
You guys are more outside the zeitgeist than I am by not doing that. Watching.
Yeah, we are.
Pretty lame. Succession is like it's where it's at.
Okay, so when I watch it, are we gonna do like? I think the Browns podcast did this. Are we gonna do like a Succession podcast where we like compare Bengals players to Succession characters? Like, is that what we're going to do next?
Not if you want to keep covering the team, because there's no flattering.
Oh, maybe not Succession, but maybe something. Speaking of March Madness, I have a cool little podcast idea I have coming up built off of that. I don't want to give it away, but I want to wait for the tournament to wrap up tonight once it's all said and done, and then I'll tell you what this is, because we're going to have some fun. This is the off season. But yeah, I don't know. I want San Diego State to win. I'm not a big UConn guy. I loathe them because they cost Kentucky 2 national titles when I was in high school, and I'm still bitter about the championship Kentucky should have won in 2014. So I like Dan Hurley. I think he's a really good coach. I honestly think they're worthy of being a blue blood, but I love parity. I think San Diego State's on a killer run. They've won their last 2 games by a single point, 2 points combined. Unreal. Buzzer beater. Give me the madness. Give me a Cinderella. I want San Diego State. Well, stay with us, because later this week we're going to continue looking at other positions of need outside of tight end, where the Bengals should attack it in the draft, who they should attack it with and why, and much more fun and goodness on here. But once again, for myself, Andrew, and Mike, I'm Muhammad Ahmad. Enjoy some basketball.